Hey everyone, welcome to the show, My So-Called Fabulous. I'm Tiffany. Welcome back, everyone. And you have listened to me talk about this and talk about it and talk about it, autoimmune disease. And I have 3 that I know of. There we go. And my precious friend, Dr. Julie Kennedy with Seed Wellness in Fort Worth, she's a beautiful nurse practitioner. She's functional medicine, and she's amazing. She is absolutely amazing. And we were going to talk about autoimmune. I mean, she and I actually talked about it last year, and like, why aren't we talking about this? So welcome back to the show, Dr.
Thanks so
Julie
much.
Kennedy. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tiffany.
You're so welcome.
Yes.
Well, when you were here last season, you weren't feeling well, and you braved the storm to talk about gut issues. Thank you very much. But the
Thanks
things
for
we
having
do, right?
Right.
The things we do. So how are you feeling?
Better.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Getting rid of mold.
Getting rid of mold.
Do you think mold was your big culprit?
Well, a combination of mold and lots of stress. I
Yeah.
finished my doctoral program, had some personal life issues, and then the mold was just the icing on the cake.
Icing on the cake,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about autoimmune. I'm going to catch everyone up to speed on mine, and then I want you to share with yours. But mine started with psoriasis of the scalp in 2020, COVID, and we were all stressed. But I talk with different guests about stress, and I poo-poo it, but it's true. Stress
Sure.
makes it worse.
Right.
Was just enraged with my scalp was it was awful. Then I go into collagenous colitis. I find that out. We're going to treat that with another biologic, okay?
Sure.
And then I find out I have a form of arthritis, and then had my implants out. So those 3, and I have to say, yay me, are pretty much under control. But it's it didn't happen overnight.
No. And treating the root of the issue
Exactly.
was the piece there.
So tell us what you suffer from autoimmune wise.
So autoimmune issues is something I'm really passionate about because of my own history. Like
Right.
you having me here today, you're passionate about it as well. So when I was 19, so almost 30 years ago, I was diagnosed with discoid lupus.
Ugh.
And put on a biologic to suppress my immune system. And my other symptoms appeared, and I just got worse. I felt worse, and I thought, this can't be my way of life. I'm young, but here I was studying traditional medicine at the time. So I listened, and I did what they told me to do. So I eventually weaned myself off and put myself into remission for 10 years. And then when I had my daughter, she had health issues, which caused, again, stress is a huge factor. That's kind of the tipping point. You see that commonly people have some sort of stress issues or multiple stress issues, and then that triggers an autoimmune issue. And so she was sick. I was having personal life issues as well. And then I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So my second autoimmune issue, and then my lupus came back as well. But this time I knew what to do. And so employed all those lifestyle measures that we're going to talk about today. And then went into remission again. And then I had mold toxicity, which you and I have talked about in detail. And so then I got psoriasis with that. So it's common that it comes out of the skin.
Yes.
So you see that often. So that was my third diagnosis. But at this time, I'm in remission from all 3, just using these things we're going to talk about today.
Well, I want to ask you towards the end of the show what you did to put your body and my body in remission.
Sure.
And I've seen you and you gave me such great tools. And you can find Julie. We'll have her information in the show notes if you need to reach out to you. I encourage it. She's amazing. So talk to me about what is autoimmune disorders and disease, because it seems like, or maybe I wasn't listening, we're just now talking about it.
I know. And that's, not only because of my personal history, but because it is such a significant issue and there's not good awareness around it. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to come here. And I was so excited to be back today.
Yeah.
But about 50 million Americans, I just want to share some statistics.
Yes.
That's a significant number. About 78% of those is women. So we're looking at about 1 in 15 Americans that have an autoimmune issue. For women, it's the top 3 diseases that are out there. So cancer and heart disease are the only 2 above that. So that's pretty significant. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted to just build awareness about These numbers are concerning, and there's a lot of lifestyle things that we can do to prevent and also reverse and put people into remission.
What is autoimmune disease?
Yeah, so autoimmune issues, just like the body would fight against bacteria or viruses, the body starts to fight against its own cells, tissues, organs, depending on what type of autoimmune issue there is. And there are another statistic, there are about 100 autoimmune issues out there right now. Yeah, so
I mean,
that's a lot.
and what we have is the big ones, right?
Some of the big ones, yeah.
But tell me, could you give me 5 that are very common? I mean, what
Sure.
we've talked about, but
Sure. There's issues of the gut, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, skin we've already talked about, psoriasis is a big one. Lupus, which I've talked about. Discoid lupus is the skin version, which is what I had. And then there's systemic, which is full body lupus. Multiple sclerosis. That's another one. RA, rheumatoid arthritis.
yeah.
So those are, a lot of people hear those names and they don't really know, okay, what can I do besides suppress my immune system?
Right. With biologics,
With
correct?
biologics.
And Julie, I say this, and you may not agree with me, and I know there's a time and place
Sure.
for most medications, but don't you feel like we're over prescribing?
Absolutely. And the thing about medications is then they cause side effects. And then you're giving more medications to treat those side effects. But yes, there is a time and a place. So if someone is really having a bad flare and they're not doing well, starting out with that, but then coming underneath with these lifestyle pieces that we're going to talk about, doing both and eventually pulling them off of these biologics that cause other issues is essential.
Yeah. So you talked to us about the statistics, and I love that you said it because someone just told me the other day that they had MS, but they didn't have autoimmune issues. That's incorrect information, right? I mean, and somewhere there's a missing link in these diagnoses, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, are we shying against saying the word, or I
think that there's not awareness.
Yeah.
And so talking about it today is part of
huge.
the solution.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
we need it. So you use the word, and I hear the word root cause so much, and I'm becoming so passionate with that word. What does that mean?
Yeah. So take mold toxicity, for instance. Something you and I are both very passionate about as well. So treating with mold, so some of my symptoms, just to give you an example, last year, I had psoriasis, I had brain fog, I had fatigue, I had joint pain. My fibromyalgia actually flared, eczema, acne, severe fatigue, stuttering, word recall issues, lots of brain impact there. And so if I would have gone to a traditional provider, we would have treated each one of those individually. So treated me with some of those biologics for psoriasis, for instance. But when I treated the mold, all the symptoms went away. And so that is what we call treating the root of the issues, treating the root cause, or a root cause approach. And that's very much functional medicine, in addition to using lifestyle as treatment.
So you with mold, do you know where that came from?
Yes.
Where? Tell me. I mean, okay, you
I
said
was living in it.
you were living in
I was
it,
living
and
in
people
it.
don't realize it,
In a
right?
rent home. A lot of times people don't realize it.
That's right. And I mean, what do you do? I mean, it's your home.
Right. Well, at the time I was renting, so that was convenient. I
Right.
just moved out.
You just moved.
Right.
See ya.
Ideally, that's what you want to do, is get out of the source of the problem
Right.
and then
Could-
begin to heal.
Could there be other ways to get mold in your body?
Food is a
Oh.
big one.
I was waiting on that. So tell
Yeah.
us about that.
Coffee is another big one.
Yeah.
So grains, coffee, chocolate, berries, things like that have high absorption potential for mold. And there's whole lists out there with low mold foods that you can choose that will get your levels down. And that is recommended as part of the treatment for sure.
Wow.
Mhm.
Food. It all goes back to food. I had a guest earlier telling me about coffee, and I know that I'm so self-aware after having you in my life and my physician, my plastic surgeon. Coffee, there are coffee options that do not have mold.
Sure.
But it's expensive.
It's very expensive.
You know what I mean? I
Sure.
mean, and the people that are listening to this that just want to throw their hands up, right? I mean, do you see the light at the end of the tunnel in our supply chain where we're going to get this under control?
I mean, it takes people like you and I just being passionate about building awareness and spreading the word. So I think that's our participation in this whole piece. And if more people commit to do that, then you'll see that change happen sooner, right?
And I may have asked you this before, but do you see through time, back with the statistics earlier, I'm trying to say this the right way, that we have so many more cases and diagnoses now than we did, let's say, 25 years ago?
Cases with autoimmune issues?
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
And why is that?
So the lifestyle pieces that we can segue into that if you would like.
Let's go.
So, when we look at genetics, people talk a lot about genetics, and that is a risk factor for autoimmune issues, but it's only actually about 10%. And that's key here because that means 90% of it are modifiable lifestyle things that we can do. And so I actually love this acronym FIGHTS. So food is a huge part of it. Eating an anti-inflammatory diet, AIP, anti-inflammatory plan, or Mediterranean is a really good one as well for lowering inflammation, lowering sensitivities, food sensitivities. I stands for infections. Oftentimes we'll find some underlying, again, root cause infections that people have. Looking at that. So that's kind of twofold because if you have autoimmune issues, you have higher risk to get infections, but infections can also cause autoimmune issues. So it's a significant impact. And then G for gut health. That's something that, leaky gut is now linked to a causative factor for autoimmune issues. Yeah. So, and then H for hormones. So checking your thyroid, checking your sex hormones, checking your cortisol, which is one of our major stress hormones, checking all those levels to make sure that they're within range, an optimal range, not just diagnosing disease. And then T for toxins. So not only what we're putting on our skin, what we're putting in our environment, what we're breathing in, what we're eating, those pesticides, all of that, but also what we're putting out, making sure that we have, I call them the 3 Ps. We're peeing, pooping, and perspiring every day. And then I will add even lymph. So 3 Ps and lymph. So working on our lymph, nodes and fluid in our body, getting that moving those toxins out of the body. And then the last one is stress. And I'll say stress and sleep. I put those two together, making sure you're getting good sleep, making sure you're managing your stress. Sometimes we can't control what's happening around us, but also how we interpret, and then taking space and, doing things to take us out of that sympathetic fight or flight state into a more calm state through breath work, yoga, gentle walks, stretching, things like that.
All of those things.
Yes. So FIGHTS is a good acronym for everyone to remember to get through some of those modifiable lifestyle factors that they can control.
Right. I love that. And you follow along. We're talking about that in about 13 minutes into the podcast, FIGHTS. So all of those lifestyle changes, because people always ask, you're so healthy. Have you heard this?
Yes, all the time.
All the time. You're so healthy. How? And, I would say I don't know, but I know because I didn't know last year at this time, but now I know, and putting things in your body.
Sure.
When I met with you, gosh, it's probably been a year and a half ago, I guess, but I came to your office and I talked to you about breast implant illness and my implants. What, as a practitioner, was your first thought? When I shared that with you, did you say, okay, maybe, right? Or
well, yes, I've heard of that before and treated clients with that a similar situation.
Right.
Because the mold that can grow,
Yeah.
and then also just the chemicals and toxins that are part of the materials that they use.
Yes.
But what happens, Tiffany, is it's typically a 20-year journey that gets us here.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that doesn't have the same history as you can have breast implants and not have any issues.
Right. Yeah.
But it's an accumulation of life that has brought you. A lot of times we think, oh, bam, all of a sudden an autoimmune issue comes out of the sky and hits us, but it doesn't work that way.
No, it didn't happen overnight either.
Right.
You know, and you have a great point. I love the way you said this because people always say to me, oh, you're against it. You're against it. No, I'm not. It did not work out for my body or me.
Right.
And everybody has a right to do what they want.
Sure.
But it was putting that something foreign in my body and it just didn't work.
Perfect storm.
It was the perfect storm. And you know what? You and I have talked about this for our childhood, where we grew up.
Sure.
I have a friend that grew up in Flint, Michigan. The water.
Right.
I mean, just sick. So many things in our lifestyle, in our life, and our lifestyle, and our surrounding, all makes a difference, right?
Absolutely.
It does.
And antibiotic use. I mean, we talked about this with gut health.
Talk about that.
Up, yeah.
Yes.
Overuse of antibiotics, strips the microbiome, which is the non-human cells in our body.
Yes.
And so that imbalance and then chronic inflammation with toxicities, et cetera, can cause leaky gut. And leaky gut is really the root of autoimmune issues. It's a huge piece.
You know, I remember this so vividly. Having the pink bottle in our refrigerator of antibiotics and how many swigs of the pink, like one was going to do the job. Right. You know, and we've come so far.
Sure.
You know, I do remember in my lifetime, early years of going to a doctor and they would easily give me an antibiotic. And of course I was like, if you don't give me one, I won't be well.
Right.
But now it is difficult. The medical practices I go to, they're like,
yes,
you know, and because the first thing someone would say is, yeah, you take an antibiotic. No, I'm not going to do it because I know what's happened to my gut.
Sure.
You know,
well, there's a whole antibiotic stewardship program now, which is amazing amongst traditional providers.
Yes.
So that is to not prescribe right away. To wait and watch is the whole theory.
Really?
And so with ear infections, for instance, about 90% of them are caused from a virus. And that was definitely prescribed when we were little for ear infections.
Yes.
So it's educating clinicians, which we are, but it's also educating people like you and I that are just going in, trying to seek treatment. I had a mom that said, just give them an antibiotic, just give them because that's what she knew when she was growing up. Sure. And so it's educating on, there's this whole awareness right now that, you know, it's not the best thing. And a lot of times it's viral, which an antibiotic is not going to treat. And so there's taking the time to educate people that were of that generation that we were, that prescribed amoxicillin for everything.
You went to TCU Medical. I mean, you as a nurse practitioner, we're trained Western.
Yes.
You're seeing the shift.
I am. The antibiotic stewardship program was part of our program.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that is exciting information.
It is exciting.
It really is. And bringing together Western and integrative, functional. It's so exciting.
Sure.
I absolutely. So go back to the mold with you. And I have heavy metal. I mean, a lot of heavy metal, parasites. What did you do to rectify yourself? Obviously, you changed your lifestyle, and you talk about that. What did you do? Is it? I know what you did, but talking for just people listening.
Yeah.
The supplements. Is it food? What is it? What is the treatment
for mold, heavy metals, etc.?
Yeah.
So the first step is the gut. Really working on repairing leaky gut. Leaky gut, the medical term is increased intestinal permeability. So what's happening is that lining of the gut becomes inflamed and the tight junctions in between cells are not tight anymore. And so what happens is bacteria, larger food molecules get into the bloodstream and then they cause this widespread inflammation. And that's what is one of the big roots of autoimmune issues. And so really working on getting inflammation down, sealing up those tight junctions so that we don't have that leaking going on is part of the first treatments, because you don't want to pull off mold or heavy metals if your gut's still leaky, because you could cause more inflammation, more autoimmune issues.
Right. Before I had surgery, I was, you remember me, I was just like a hamster in a wheel. I just wanted to be fixed so badly.
Yeah.
And I remember asking my surgeon, because his protocol is to detox, but he wouldn't let me start before surgery. And I was like, but it let me start, I was just begging for anything. And he's like, it just doesn't work like that. And for a Western trained doctor that's a plastic surgeon that removes the source for me and then treats, it's a miracle, I mean,
I was so glad when you told me that he was taking the proper steps.
yes.
And I will say that everything we're talking about today are things that people can really start to work on in their lives. But if they have serious things like mold, heavy metals, or, breast implant illness like you did, having a provider guide so that it's, intelligently done and in the proper order so it doesn't make things worse is
Right.
important.
Yes, I have a friend right now that she had her implants removed, but they didn't have the capsules removed, which is where the mold, like you said, and where for me they found cancer cells, and removed them. So having things done correctly in the right way, and I'm sure you do your research when you're going to
Of course.
practitioners, everyone, of course, of course. So you said something earlier about genetics. 10% is genetics. And I think about my mom, Julie, which is deceased. She died from cancer very early age. And I wonder sometimes if she had types, because I remember types of autoimmune, because I remember her having severe skin issues. Severe. I mean, I was 4 years old. Just remember her being her hands, and I don't know what it could have been. She stopped practicing her job, and then she had gut issues. I remember it so vividly.
Yeah.
And so I could be one of those that's 10%, right?
Sure.
But that's a rarity, right?
Right. Well, the 10% is just to show you that we have a lot of control, so it's not our destiny. Even though that may be our genetics, it's not our destiny to get cancer
For sure.
or to get an autoimmune issue. There's a lot of lifestyle pieces. And so just listening to your mom, some of those things that she was having, she had lots of inflammation and maybe infections, toxicity that led her to keep growing those abnormal cancer cells.
Right.
But again, could have been prevented.
Could have been. For sure.
Starting early.
Yeah, yeah. Her cancer was environmental. She was a smoker very early on. And I remember her going to the doctor and him saying, were you ever a smoker? And she's like, no. Oh, yeah. But just those toxins being put in your body, right?
Well, if that combined again with other things, just really is
I know.
faster. Yeah.
I know. So you and I both have a passion for fitness and exercise. How much in your journey have you found fitness to be a key player? It's obviously a lifestyle.
Sure.
You and I enjoy working out. It's part of our DNA. But a lot of people don't. Does this affect? I mean, it helps my stress.
Sure.
The first thing I do. How does that type of lifestyle make a difference?
Well, movement is medicine in itself, just like you mentioned that it's good. I call it my anti-everything bad. But not everybody is like us, like you mentioned. And so even just getting out and walking and moving the body, being outside, that movement is good for stress management. Being outside is good for stress management. It's also a way that we detox and move our lymph fluid in our body, which helps get rid of toxins. So
Amazing.
It doesn't have to be maybe as hardcore as you and I enjoy.
Right.
Right. But even as I've gotten older and wiser with my movement, when I was sick with mold toxicity, I cut way back.
Did you?
My body, my adrenals were already really stressed.
Right.
And so having that awareness is important too. If you're already really sick and your body's very stressed, intense exercise can be, a negative thing in that way. So gentle walking, gentle yoga, stretching, that's perfect.
Right.
When someone's already really stressed.
Right. In my younger years, I didn't know the word gentle.
Right.
at all,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, but hey.
I call myself the president of the extremists club. Like I had the T-shirt, you had one or the other.
You used to say that you got the CD.
Exactly.
I don't have that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you shop organic?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
And clean your vegetables how?
So vinegar, water, I let it soak and then rinse it off.
What is the measurements? Like, what are the measurements?
I'm not very good about that. I kind of pour. That's how I cook too.
Oh, not me.
Are you a measure?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
so,
well, because
but there's formulas out there. Yeah, for sure. It's different.
Just any
You're a
type
true
of vinegar?
chef. I'm a
Yeah.
throw it together chef. Well, I use distilled white organic vinegar.
Okay, distilled water.
Yeah, and water.
The questions that we get.
Filtered water.
Filters water, of course.
But you can definitely Google. There are recipes out there that have that.
I love that. So talk to us. You talk about the lymph system, lymphatic massage,
Yeah.
and what else? Red light therapy, sauna. All of these things are helpful, right? And
Absolutely.
what am I trying to think? It was the infusion. What that you I can't remember.
Ozone?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Is that what
Oh,
we're
talking about ozone therapy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yes. So we talked about that before. But
Yeah.
all of these things are great for red light therapy.
Yeah. Well, so with the lymphatic system, it can get really backed up. That's how we move toxins, as I've mentioned, in the body. And when we have an overload, a surplus of toxins, the body gets very overwhelmed. And I call it can become stagnant. And so at that point, things are not moving and flowing. We should be able to contract muscles, and that lymph fluid moves very easily. It's not something that has to be done necessarily, unless you get into a state where you're overly toxic and your body is overly burdened. Then you have to manually help move that along and do things to help sweat and get things out.
The 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps.
Do you like red light therapy?
I love red light therapy.
Do you have one or do you go to it?
I go to iCryo.
Okay.
As a red light bed. And then also I do have a sauna space light that I offer all my clients when I meet with them. It's on them. It just helps with inflammation, helps promote healing.
And what is that?
Red light.
Oh, okay.
Sauna space red light.
Oh,
it's a huge bulb, so you're going to get more power.
Really? I need to get that, and we'll link that in the show notes. That is
And then
amazing.
I go to Perspire, which has infrared
Okay.
in the sauna.
In the sauna.
In the sauna.
So
I get lots of red light.
You do. You love that.
I do.
I just, I have my physicians like, how many times are you saunaing a week? I'm like, ugh. But it takes time. This is an investment in time and money. And, we don't advocate for ourselves,
For sure.
Well,
It's an investment. And, I was talking to a guest out there, and we start talking about she struggles with urinary tract infections. Her dad has cancer. And she's like, well, I'm sorry. I just asked you to. I'm like, this is my life. I love it. And this is how we build awareness and run the word, if you will.
Yeah.
But, she with sauna or anything like that, just moving every day, doing some sort of movement, sweating every day.
Right.
Just pick your poison. But it doesn't have to be expensive.
Right.
Walking outside, Epsom salt baths, using magnesium flakes in a hot bath to help you sweat. That can help too, and it's very inexpensive.
Oh, my goodness. This is such great information, Julie. It's so
Thanks
amazing.
for having me.
If you could share one thing that someone should get out of this podcast, what would the one thing be in the 30.27 minutes that we've been together?
Yeah, so the summary of the whole thing is that we have control. There's hope out there that we can do a lot of lifestyle things to prevent and also put our autoimmune issues into remission. I live medication-free because of the lifestyle choices that I make, which is huge.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for
you
being
so
here.
much.
I'll bug you again.
I love it.
There's always something to talk about with Dr. Kennedy.
Well, thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. And what a precious friend you are and an advocate for so many of us. So how can we find you?
So at Seed Wellness Co. is my Instagram. Seedwellness.co is my website.
Well, and follow her along. She is so great. She shows many things on her, both your personal too. I mean, you just show yourself you the working out, the gentle working out
Yes.
that you're doing. Yeah.
Now I'm back to more intense workouts because I can.
The pendulum swings
Yes.
and you're feeling great. Well, I'm so
Sure.
glad you're feeling
Thank
well.
you.
And so
Thank you
everyone,
too.
thank you so much for listening and viewing, and make sure you're checking us out on YouTube. You can see us over there. And I say it every single Tuesday, keep being fabulous.